City of Stevens Point Personnel Committee meeting, recorded October 12, 2020.
I will call the October meeting of the Personnel Committee to order at 6:29. I see miniature alders Leek and Zarazua on my screen, and I see Alder Dalton's name, and I'm going to assume that she's there. And so, in addition to myself, and then Alder Nabel is excused, couldn't make it this evening. Okay, and our first agenda item after roll call is a request to increase agenda item 2 is a request to increase hours for the production specialist. We have a memo on that, and I don't know whether the mayor would like to elaborate, or Director Kramer, or John.
Director Kramer doesn't have anything to do with community media anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it moved. Of course, we moved it.
Yeah, that was a while ago, and they're actually moving the physical location. They're going to be in 33 Michigan very soon. So what this is, John Quirk is our community media manager. He is full-time. Sarah Thoreau is our production specialist. And the simple fact of the matter is we've been utilizing that resource a lot more. The fire department just did a bunch of videos. I know the PD did some recruitment videos. People are using it. Our departments are utilizing that, realizing that the reach of media in general is effective. And with all of the additional duties that have been going on for John Quirk, including managing of the radio station and the other duties associated with that, along with some of the moves that we've had, and just generally being more active with all forms of media, including social media. Right now we have more work than Sarah can do within her 20 hours a week. Last year we took quite a few liberties with that, and we don't want to do that because the position is set for a certain time. So what we're doing is we're simply just asking for the hours that we can use to increase Sarah's work time to get some of these projects done in a more timely manner.
Thank you, Mayor. And those responsibilities and the nature of that work is detailed in the memo. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from anyone else? I would entertain a motion.
Alder Shore, Alder Dalton here. I would move to increase the hours for the production specialist from 20 to 32 as requested.
Thank you very much, Alder Dalton. Do I have a second?
Leek here, I'll second it.
Thank you, Alder Leek. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
I would say all opposed, but I think I heard 4 distinct ayes. So it is unanimous. Item number 3 is the next 2 items have to do with the salary levels for elected officials. Item 3, the citywide elected officials up for election next spring, and then subsequently the alder salary. Again, Mayor Wiese, would you like to get us going?
Absolutely. So for every elected position within the city, any salary adjustments have to be made prior to the election of the next term. So you can't vote yourself a raise. There has to be an election cycle in there. For example, the mayor's salary has to be set for 4 years prior to the election. So it won't be set again until the April of 23 term. Alders salaries, alders are elected every 2 years and we rotate. So those can only be considered for a term after an election cycle. And right now, this spring, we have all of the odd numbered alder districts. And speaking of odd, we have the comptroller treasurer. That was a low shot. The comptroller treasurer, city attorney, and city clerk are all up for election in spring of 2021. So now is the time when we set that salary, and then anyone who's interested in those positions has the ability to run. We may get the same people in, we may get different people in, but that's why we set those salaries. And that salary for those 3 positions have to be set for the full term, which is a 4-year period. So we reviewed, and I had HR manager Yakush do some research for us. We checked our neighboring communities. If you remember 4 years ago, we tried to get right back in line with all of those salaries. Well, it turns out that we're still pretty close, but one wasn't quite as close. The comptroller treasurer in our comparable communities was slightly higher. So what the recommendation is from my office is, because we're pretty much in line, and our cost of living adjustment for our employees will be 1.56% this year. I'm recommending a 1.5% increase for the comptroller, I'm sorry, for the clerk and the city attorney for each of the next 4 years. And to get us closer to being in line with our neighboring communities, a 2.5% increase for the comptroller treasurer each of the next 4 years. And the dollar amounts and impacts are listed in the memo.
Thank you. Any further? We'll come back to the question of the alders after dealing with the 3 citywide electeds. But any questions regarding those recommendations for those positions? First from the committee, then from anyone else. President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note, first, I don't support these increases because there's not a lot of qualifications attached to these, which gets back to my entire discussion about appointed versus elected. And the finance director is a different position from a comptroller treasurer. A finance director comes with a different set of very specific skill set and is typically appointed. Again, just trying to drive home a point. Those are my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you for all the information, Mayor, about all of the other communities. Before I now see Alder Dalton wants to ask a question, but let me go ahead and ask mine. Could you say more about how you look at what counts as sort of apples to us, or what, looking at the range of other different communities? And this is a question that can apply to other issues, but I'd be interested in hearing more about that.
Sure, absolutely. So we have municipalities are significantly different than what you would see in a non-public environment. So we have, I don't want to say limited, but we have a specific set of municipalities that we consider comparable. Similar sizes, similar positions, and of course, similar duties. So we've used that list through all of our pay plan adjustments for the last at least 10 years or so. They do vary occasionally, but there's nobody exactly like Stevens Point, because we're way beyond anybody else as far as coolness, Our awesome factor is off the charts. People want to come here. Most of them, I think, would work for free just to be part of it. But I'm, of course, kidding. What we're looking at is similar size cities and the duties. And that's really what it comes down to. We use these same comparables because a public works department in Manitowoc has very similar positions to the public works department here. So while President Johnson said a finance director is very different than a comptroller treasurer, I would agree to a certain extent. However, they're doing the same duties. The duties are the same for all intents and purposes. The finance director and comptroller treasurer are kind of in charge of the money. And that's what that office does. The same would be true for the city attorney's position and the city clerk's position. They are very similar in duties to every other municipality. So then it comes down to workload. You would probably have in Madison, the city attorney's office probably has a dozen or more people working in it. We have 2. The finance director in Milwaukee or Waukesha might have a dozen people in their office. We've got 4. So it's amount of the workload is what really comes into play next. That's why we choose communities that are similar in size, because with a certain number of employees, the workload will be the same. We have about roughly 250 employees. So the payroll for 250 employees is going to be very similar to the payroll for 270 or 300 employees. So that's why we choose the comparables.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed in the past, just as I've scanned, Superior is particularly close in size to ourselves. Anyway, but as I say, Alder Dalton on the committee wanted to say something, and after her, Alder Morrow.
Okay, did I answer your question, Alder Shore?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Alder Dalton here. I appreciate the further explanation on some of the qualitative comparisons here, because some of the things that I'm also taking into consideration is cost of living, because cost of living in Neenah is substantially higher than comparative cost of living here in Stevens Point. And I guess I appreciate that we want to stay competitive, but I think, research has shown when you're looking at motivation for people to enter into a workplace, as long as they are satisfied or have enough fulfillment on a monetary level and kind of a baseline, there's a plateau, and a lot of the motivations have nothing to do with money at all. And I think particularly because these are elected positions, whether or not there is an increase over these terms. And while I appreciate that the duties are specific and perhaps, changing rapidly in these times, that I think where our salaries are currently poised are well above the average salary here in this community. And if somebody is wanting to step into this role as a public servant, I feel very comfortable and confident that what we are able to offer at this time is enough. And so I will not be supporting these increases.
Thank you, Alder Dalton. Alder Morrow.
I agree with Alder Dalton that money is not the main thing, but you have to think but you have to also pay someone so that they even want to put their hat in. They want to put their hat into the ring as well, because you just don't have to interview for one person. You're in effect trying to interview for the entire area. And so if you don't get the folks who want to do this job, and if it doesn't offer enough money so that they could also pay their bills, they could have a good quality of life, then I think you're at a risk of getting someone who shouldn't be in this job, really, who see it as like something for the short term, just to try to raise themselves, try to find something else. And I think you would open yourself up to someone who's not really actually qualified. So I think that you should pay folks what it's worth, because I see it again and again. Folks try to lowball folks, and then they get what they actually pay for. and then they have regrets about that. So I think if someone's doing their job, I think if you are an elected official and you're not doing your job, there's plenty of ways that folks are going to find out you're not doing your job and you're going to be voted out. Because being in an elected office, you're not guaranteed a job. I mean, every 2 to 4 years, you have to end up running an election again. And if you don't do your job well, the press is going to let folks know it. The voters are going to know it as well. So it's not a very secure job. I mean, you could be out every 4 years, and then what are you going to end up doing? So I think if you pay folks what they're worth, again, money's not the main reason, because if it was, you would not want to be have to go through an election. You wouldn't have to pay money to be hired and so on. So that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't I go ahead and offer a view? These are modest increases, and it does seem like a way to keep from falling behind. Right, this could be a hedge against any more gap opening up. In general, I'm against wage stagnation. What makes me more comfortable about doing this now, particularly, is that we have done a few things recently focused on the other end of the pay scale, which I think have been really important. I will have a different view on the next item, which I'll justify on the basis of it being part-time positions, but we'll get to that. That's just a preview. Mayor Wiese, yeah.
So thank you, and Alder Shore and Alder Morrow, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. We have very qualified people in these positions, and we've had the luxury of having qualified people in those positions. The employee rate, everybody outside of the electeds, and of course this is up to council, but we're going to recommend this year the cost of living. We tried to put an emphasis on that this year that's going to be 1.56%. And I apologize for bringing the comptroller in on this, but last year I think it was 2.06 or something like that. Regardless, that's the cost of living is going up. The cost of hard cider is going up. The cost of burritos is going up. The cost of cars is going up. We want to make sure that all of our employees, regardless of whether they're hired, elected, or appointed, have the same ability to meet that cost of living. And as Alder Shore says, 1.5% is lower than we anticipate all of the other employees getting. Next year, it might be 2%. The year after that, it might be 2.5%. We're setting it at 1.5% and 2.5% for the next 4 years. I know that not only the electeds, but every single one of your directors and all of your employees have that same passion for public service. The other thing I want you to consider is what we don't compare ourselves to is the private sector. If you want to talk about the ability to make money, working in the private sector can often get you more money than you will get in the public sector. People choose to work in the public sector majorly because of their commitment to service to the community. I don't want to shortchange any of our staff just because they haven't been or happen to be elected rather than appointed. The recommendation for every other single employee, including all of the directors that are on this meeting, is going to be 1.56%, which is what this council committed to several years ago to make sure that our employees were compensated and we could remain competitive. So I would urge you to take a look at these, as Alder Shore said, modest increases for the next term, and think about our ability to make sure that we still attract competitive people, even in the elected positions. Thank you.
President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to rebut this, except for the fact that all of our employees, those people who are hired, not elected, are the worker bees. They do the work. Without them, we are nothing. And they are the ones who deserve, they have demonstrated their qualifications. They have demonstrated their dedication, and they deserve everything that we can possibly give them. I have a problem. As Alder Dalton said, in this community, this is a wage that's far above what many people in our community make. The Alice report, I believe, which former Alder Dugan frequently quoted, demonstrated that half of our community lives in poverty. And a family working, two adults, is making about half of what we're recommending here. I have a problem with paying elected officials. Again, I will not dispute the fact that we have highly qualified individuals in these positions of clerk, attorney, and comptroller treasurer. But at the drop of a hat, with a heartbeat, that could change. And we no longer have an incredibly dedicated, well-qualified individual, but someone who is popular and garners enough votes. And for 4 years, makes nearly $500,000 while not being qualified. I can't support that. I'm sorry. So I appreciate that they are hardworking individuals. We want well-qualified individuals to run. But if the qualifications are breathing, living in the district, no felony record, 18 years of age and older, I'm having a hard time with this, considering we have so many in our community right now that are facing some significant challenges. I think it's irresponsible. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Alder Slawinski and then Alder Nebo.
I guess I want to appreciate President Johnson's comments and concerns. I do. It makes sense. But on the other hand, these positions, I would have to say that if you just get a breathing human being, with basically the bare minimum, 18 years of age, no felonies, I would have to think that, that person would not last. They'd be ran out of town, so to speak. I've sat in many of these conversations over the years with the city, and the direction that we're kind of talking about going now really concerns me, because I think we're at a level now with our pay to our employees where it's fair, it's equal. If we start nitpicking certain positions, and saying, well, these, this group of people here, we're not giving a raise to because it's not justified, we're going to run into trouble again. Wage compression, not fair based on comparables. The other communities are going to start, pulling away from us. And I'm just really leery on this. And again, though, I do appreciate President Johnson and the other testimony tonight as far as the concerns, but I guess that's where my concern is that we're going to slip back into that hole that we are in. I think we're at a point now where we're very equal and fair to everyone. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Alder Nebo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think as elected officials, we have a responsibility to be leaders in our community. And I think I'm conflicted on this because I know that we would freeze the salaries for 4 years, but I think a quality of leadership is setting an example for everyone. And I think that even though the increase might be approved, in these difficult economic times, foregoing that pay increase might be a great example of showing service to the community. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll just recognize that there really are good arguments on both sides of this issue. Alder Murrow, go ahead.
I have one last comment. As a state employee, this is exactly what happened to state employees. They went on they had a wage stagnation for 10 years. And in my field, we can't keep enough folks because the pay is so low. They've been trying to make up for it, but for 10 years, there was no raise. And so the concern that I have is if we don't end up, if we don't pay folks what's worth, because the mayor's right, everything else goes up. I mean, you might try to keep the wages low, but then, as I've said before, you get what you actually pay for. And the folks who want to go into service, and they might not want to do that because it doesn't end up paying. It doesn't pay enough. Because to be in this field, you also have to have very thick skin for all the comments that you're going to hear. And it doesn't matter if you're an alder, if you're this mayor, if you're a director and so on, and if you're Corey or Logan, you're going to get a lot of blowback for the decisions that you make. And these elected positions are the ones that also set the rules and the policy, which are what the government employees carry out. So we need folks at the top who know what they're actually doing and who want to be here to do that. And so that's why I'm in favor of this.
Thanks, Alder Leek.
Yeah, I think, of course, the question of poverty in our community is an important matter, but I don't see it as especially relevant because it doesn't really determine what an appropriate compensation would be, just the average. I don't think that could be right because we're talking about highly specialized and educated workers here. And I think the point about qualifications is a technical matter from so let's say a standard HR perspective, but I think we just have to live with that. The fact that this is a somewhat unusual situation from an HR perspective because they're elected officials. And you cannot we do not hire them per se for their qualifications, or at least we don't. The voters do hire them based hopefully on their qualifications, and we just have to trust that they're going to the voters will hire the person that is qualified, which they've done. So in that case, I think we have to pay for the qualifications that we want. And again, this question of what the average salary in this region is not entirely irrelevant, but it's really not what the criterion should be for making this kind of decision, because you have to pay for what you need, not what what a 18-year-old, say my daughter might be able to do, or because no jail record and so forth. Yeah, I mean, we can't pay based on the minimum qualifications. That's just an unusual situation, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Thank you, and thanks for that point. I'm inclined to agree. I think I understood you correctly that there is a connection. While there is a connection between this issue and the difficult times, I think it has more to do with the difficult budgetary choices and needing to needing to be careful about the tax levy as well, rather than it relating to other wages. But I think it's the thing that Alder Kneebone reminded us that does tip me in favor of supporting this, and that's the we only get to look at this every 4 years piece. It would be easier for me to kind of take that kind of fiscal prudence. Let's go easy on the budget this year, which I'm inclined in some areas. If this weren't something that, by the way this is done, we only get to look at before the elected term. So with that, I'll either make a motion or take a motion.
Chair Shore, you have Alder Zarazua who'd like to speak.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much for that. Alder Zarazua.
Thank you. As usual, we always have all these tough decisions to make. I just think that we're not like determining the base salary. We're talking about a incremental increase. And I think everyone in any position that they felt they were doing a good job would want to get a raise. I think it's important to maintain integrity and for morale that we have that. And I think while we can talk about other areas in the private sector that people maybe don't get raises at a rate that they should, I think we're charged to do the right thing. And I think that in this case, it's supporting fair wages, equitable wages for comparable work. So I also support this change.
That sounds very close to a motion.
And I would move to approve the salary increases as written in the agenda.
Leak here, I'll second.
Thank you to both of you. We've had extensive discussion, and I think we've had a lot of the perspectives. I am supposed to pause in between the motion being on the floor and calling the vote. Looking for any absolute urgent. Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I was muted. Aye.
Thank you. That's opposed.
Aye.
That vote is 3-1, and the motion carries. Thank you very much. Now moving to item number 4, which is alderpersons' salaries. And Alder Zarazua did just make an excellent point about not letting salaries be flat. We do work, put a lot of work into this role. There's no question about it. But it's not our full-time job. Personally, I'm inclined to wait, which we've done before, and let me immediately add, we can't wait forever. That's not a sustainable position either. It's been 5 years now. I would add one key point to the mayor's presentation on this issue. So because the nature of the rule here is to prevent anyone from voting on their own salary, there would be a delay for anyone who's in the even years. We're coming up on an odd year, right? Anyone who's in the even years, the salary would not take effect until April of 2022, until after that half of the council has been up for election. like I say, it's been 5 years. The one point of clarification, and I don't know whether the mayor might well know this. It was 10 years in between the last time. That was referred to as a freeze, but was it some kind of decade-long freeze, or was it just not acting?
Self-imposed. So the council chooses the salary for the next council, not themselves. You will never vote yourself a raise. There will always be a time in there. But like you, their minds at the time, and I was one of them, it is our part-time job. We choose to do this because we want to get involved. It's a little bit different than those full-time elected positions where it's your primary source of income and really in a specialized field. The same qualifications hold true for us that they do, for alders, as it does for any other elected office. You need to be 18, you need to be breathing, you can't have any unpardoned felonies, and you have to be able to legally vote. That doesn't make you any less of a person. Your passion at the alderperson level is arguably more so than anyone in elected office, because you are right there. You are part of the people that you're representing, more so because you live in those neighborhoods. Now, when I was on council, we chose for 10 years to forego any sort of increase. Part of that reasoning, for at least myself, was to try and set that example, that we're not doing this job in this case for the money. And honestly, every single one of you on this call know that as an alder, if you were getting paid hourly, this is well below the Alice average. We put in a lot more hours as alderpersons than most people realize. So really, it is up to you. It was my job to make the recommendation. I am recommending, again, that modest increase of 1.5%, which is actually less than we'll be giving every other employee in the city, and probably less than Portage County is going to see, Marathon County at the director level, and every level there. It's very modest. It won't go anywhere near covering your expenses or compensating you adequately for your time, but it's my job to propose that, and that's what I'm doing. Last term, the council chose to take the money that would have been allocated for raises, and rather than paying individuals, they put it into a fund that the alders have called, it's like an expense account, because some of the alders thought it might be more beneficial to use that money as a resource for newsletters and things like that. And it's been used. That certainly could be an option for you as well. But I'm proposing that we at least keep pace.
So before going out for further comments, I would draw again the compare and contrast with the 4-year point. We can, unlike the last discussion, we can do this in a year. I think is a significant difference. And personally, even though it is small, personally, I would lean maybe towards getting past this really kind of revenue constrained moment with the economy. But Alder Leek, I know you had wanted to make a comment.
Generally, I agree with what you just said, that we might wait for a bit. But theoretically, let's say alderperson X from District 15 is, or maybe District 51 is financially secure, doesn't need the money, just likes to have influence in city politics. And so this alderperson from District 51 keeps his pay low and prevents others who might need the money from, and thereby prevents others or discourages others from running from office. So in a sense, his compensation is an influence. That is to say, I would not oppose this on principle, but only on the point that it might not be the best time for this. That is, we should keep these raises, or we should not be freezing this forever, because in a sense it could prevent potential candidates who are less financially secure from running.
You know, Chairman, too, it's rather unorthodox, but there is another option. You can always turn in your salary. We can donate it back to the city and use it for something else. If you want it to go towards newsletters for the alders, you could certainly do that.
I wouldn't go that far, but let's see what Alder Morrow was about to say.
I agree with Alder Leek on what he said about someone who has a lot more money. I think that's more to the point for a higher office and like our state, because the money it takes to run for a state level office is just horrible. And so if you don't have the millions of dollars to be able to do that, and with what our state reps make, I mean, it is just a shame what our state reps make. I mean, folks think that they make all this money, and they really don't. And for what they have to pay to get elected, I mean, it is just horrible. But I think for us at the local level, we don't have to like campaign for money. We don't have to dial for dollars, because we're really a small enough area. But I also agree that I don't think it's the right time to go for this. But I think because before it was 10 years. I think that sometime in the future, yes, but now is not a good time.
Acting now would cut in half that decade-long interval the last time, and I see the problem with just kind of letting it go. It's almost like we let a really long period go in between redoing the property assessments, we could wait a year or two and do this, just not now. And I think I'm hearing some sentiment in that vein. So I will pause. We do not have to act. We could just not do anything. And the reason I'm pausing is to see if any other committee member does want to do something. Any urgent final words, or I will gavel us out. Okay, the Personnel Committee adjourns at 7:12. Thank you.
Videos of these meetings are available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.